Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. You can hear me all right?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Great, I think we're just waiting for Angel and then we'll get going soon.
Hi, good afternoon, Ifi and Kola.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Olamide. I work with Leap Africa. So basically, I'll sort of be your coordinator during this session, just prompting you on time and all of that. So, prompting you through the private chat session is just at the right hand corner of your screen, just
All
beside your name icon.
right.
So I'll just keep chatting you there and keep prompting you. I will prompt you when to start, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
All
We're
right, thank
waiting
you
for
so
one more person as well.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
We're waiting for one more speaker.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
There's still an activity on the stage, so once that is done, we'll start up.
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. We're going to get started today. Oh no, we're not going to get started because Lamide says we haven't started yet. All right. Hi, Angel.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Hi, Carla. Good to see you again.
Hi, Angel. How are you? Good to see you as well. Hope all is well.
Good to see you.
Good. So I see you. Independence Day was your national dress day.
Yeah, no head tie today, right? I had just come back from a program, so it was good. I could use the makeup and the hair, the daily tying and everything for that day.
Great.
Okay, so Olamide has given us the go-ahead to start. So I think we're just going to go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from today. My name is Ifeoma and I'm the program lead for Nourishing Africa, a knowledge and membership platform aimed at African entrepreneurs scale their agribusinesses to transform the food and agriculture landscape. And for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to have two incredible trailblazers and innovators join us as we tackle the subject of technology as an enabler for scaling agribusinesses and ensuring that we have food security in Africa. So I'm going to get right into them, and through the discussion, we're going to learn more about their experiences, what they do, and their thoughts on the subject at hand. But first, I want to introduce Dr. Angel Adela-Dakoye, who is the co-founder and executive director of We Farm Africa. She's also the co-founder and CEO of Fresh Direct and the co-owner of Zahara Empire. She also wears many hats, ranging from special assistant to senior special advisor, technical assistant, and research coordinator at the Ogun State. So it's great to have you on, Angel. Our second panelist is Kola Masha, who is the managing director and co-founder of Babangona, a social enterprise, so a vast number of smallholder farmers in Nigeria, with a model that is created to attract youth. If you're in the agriculture and food space in Nigeria, there's no way you don't know about Babangona, so we're very excited to have him on. And it's great to have both of you here with us today. So let's get started, and we're going to kick off with Angel. The first question I have is, what stands out when I read about both of you is that you both saw opportunities to do something very different using tech and innovation in a sector that typically does not and did not at the time in technology the way it does now. Angel, you started Fresh Direct in 2014. How did you use technology in doing so? What gave you that idea at such a time?
So at that time, I entered into agriculture, and one of the things that I found difficult was as I started getting into tomatoes, I had difficulty getting my product to market. I had difficulty with some of my customers. I was just starting, and I think a lot of people would take advantage. And then the fuel prices went up. And so the transporters that were transporting your produce from Osun to Lagos at that time, they were gouging the prices. And I just said I wanted to find a different way of doing what it is that I do. So I just said, let me start looking at what are my options? How do I get closer to market? And I saw that a lot of people were doing urban farming, but a lot of people were doing commercial vertical farming abroad. But I didn't see anybody really doing that in Nigeria. So I started looking a lot at DIY hydroponic systems and things like that. And I just did it. I set up one in my backyard. I called my plumber and I said, I want to build this. You know, how can we do this together? And he was like, it's doable. You know, and we found all local materials. We found some recycled materials, offcuts of pipes from construction sites and things like that. And that was how we did our first prototype of a hydroponic system. Then it was to test it to see how it actually worked. And it did, and that was great. After that, we now started doing different types. We started doing Dutch bucket systems and other vertical hydroponic systems. And then one day it was just kind of like, how do we commercialize this? Not just in my backyard, but how do we make it, you know, what I'm looking for, you know, so that I don't have to go 3.5 hours to Osun to get my products to. So I was looking for space in Lagos, actually. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find, you know, the land that I was looking for in Lagos was expensive at the time. I was able to find a place in Abuja. So I said, okay, it's close to my house. Let me try something here. So we did hydroponic system in Jahi. That's about 5 minutes from Jabi, Wuse 2, Central Business District and others. Maximum 15 minutes from all my main customers in Abuja. And so we did it inside a shipping container. We were thinking about doing it inside greenhouses, but we realized that we wanted to maximize our space within that. We looked at so many different models and we said, let's test a shipping container. And so we tried that out and it worked really well. But at that time, the place where we were had no water. It had no electricity, it had nothing. So we were working on a generator and Marwas to give us water, but it worked because we were recycling the water. The water it's a recycling system. So as it's using the water, it's recycling it back into the system, you know, and then we were also using a generator at the time, but it was still financially viable. We were still able to make money from our first system. Over time, we've tried to find different ways. We just installed solar about 2 years ago to try to get past the issue of electricity, you know, and other things like that. So we've tried to continue to innovate. And I think moving forward, being able to use technology for the logistics system, being able to use technology to make sure that our customers can order in advance and that we can make sure that those who work for us are able to use technology to manage the farms is something where we want to head to. So there's so many opportunities for technology in the ag space, but that's actually what led me to technology. Was the challenges
and the infrastructure issues that you brought up, and ask more about how you were able to overcome that. But first, Kola, when we think about what Babangona is currently doing, what you've done in terms of playing a vital role in ensuring that farm market, and doing so heavily relying on technology, can you briefly discuss how you were able to do this within the typical constraints of working with smallholder farmers, and the benefits you've seen in doing this?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you know, one of the critical challenges of working with smallholder farmers is that fragmentation and the very high cost to serve. And so without significant investment in technology, it really would be impractical to scale models like Babangona. It's one of the reasons why literally from day one, we've been a very, very technology first organization. In the early days, I actually sat down on my couch and coded out our first CRM system that we used for our members, and then continuously evolved from there. I think today we've evolved from basically what I'd call maybe half of a software engineer myself to an organization today of over 30 folks in our technology organization, spanning from North America to Africa to Asia. If you look at the last 12 to 18 months, we've developed well over 38 applications. If you take all the code in those applications and put them end to end, it'd be about over 100 kilometers of code. So fundamentally, it's we are everything we do is digital. I think most people actually don't often think of Babanguna as a technology company. We think of us mostly as a agricultural company or a financing company, but actually the reality is that we have the single largest agri-tech team dedicated smallholder farmers in Africa. I think for us, I think the key reason is all of our technology we build is inward facing. So it helps us basically do what we do much better and much more efficiently. Because I think at the end of the day, when you're working with smallholder farmers, it's an exceptionally complex operation. If you look at our operation today, we're farming today the single largest maize producing entity in West Africa, farming over 80,000 acres of maize. To put that in context, that's a piece of land larger than the city of Abuja, or about 5 Manhattans. That's spread over about 52,000 discrete farms that we have to manage and track and so on and so forth. And in the next, say, 12 months, we'll be moving somewhere in the range well over close to about 200,000 tons of stuff in and out of those different locations. So it's a very, very complex technology undertaking. And I think at the end of the day, we're very fortunate to have really just a brilliant team of predominantly Nigerian engineers that are really tackling some exceptionally challenging problems. I think if you're building an application to use in the middle of Lagos and so on and so forth, it is challenging. But if you imagine the scenario where we have to build technology, it's basically has 3 unique challenges that a typical software engineer doesn't have to deal with. One, you're building technology in areas with very, very poor connectivity. And even when you do have connectivity, you've got very poor, very slow speeds and a lot of challenges. Second, you're building for a population that is not as savvy with technology. And so when you're thinking about building applications and the UI and so on and so forth, it's a much more complex activity. And then finally, if you think you have to build for low-end smartphones in Lagos, imagine building for the types of smartphones we have to build for in the areas that we work. So it makes it a very fun and unique challenge.
That's great. Before I go on, I want to inform our audience that please feel free to type in your questions. We'll definitely get to as many as we can during the session. But building on, Kola, what you just said about building technology for smallholder farmers, my question would be to sensitize the farmers into teaching them how to use it, what the benefits of them are. Is there any pushback? How have you been able to overcome this?
Well, so I think we underestimate, I think, the desire for folks who have not had the opportunity to be exposed to technology, their desire for it. And I think the reality is oftentimes the barrier has not been due to a lack of desire, but a lack of opportunity. And so once you're able to overcome that opportunity barrier and get them access to that, and clearly you're going to need to invest very significantly in helping them get over that learning curve, which we've had to do by investing tremendously in our product support team. I think you'll be shocked how quickly they'll get up to speed.
That's great. And Angel, I'm going to switch gears a little towards partnerships and talking about the pandemic in particular. And I think when you think about all the work you're doing, you're a prime and a great example of private-public partnerships and utilizing them in order for great impact. We've seen that through the pandemic that we've essentially unsuspecting collaborations and partnerships between multiple stakeholders. in what ways has this been able to change both within agriculture, change the trajectory or ensure that we're able to leverage technology more? What lessons have you learned both in your capacity at Farm Fresh Direct as well as within government?
So I think, let me go back to technology a little bit, then I'll answer this question. I wanted to piggyback on what Kala was saying in terms of adoption. One thing I experienced is, a lot of times we talk about technology and we think software. And so I just to segue into the question that you asked, we need to be able to embrace technology in the agricultural sector, the hardwares that you can develop and create, the softwares that you can develop and create, the biotechnologies that you can develop and create. And so we want to open up the concept of ag tech to be more inclusive to biotechnologies, to hardware, software, and the likes, engineering, and so on and so forth. So with that being said, one of the things that I found very inspiring is the fact that, like Kola said, once you put a little bit of energy into assisting people, you see that if you have a technology that is good, it speaks for itself. And when you can show people through experiential learning, nobody has to be a software engineer to be able to use the technology. You have to make sure that your technologies are user-friendly. And so once you're able to show them that this thing works and it is economically viable, they will buy into it. They will want to take the time to learn. You see how fast USSD code has spread through East Africa and even also West Africa. And you see that people will adopt it once it's simple, to kind of get used to. And so in government now, the work that I'm doing is trying to promote technology to ensure that women and youth have a lower barrier of entry into agriculture, especially the youth. And so what we've seen is that you have a lot of companies such as Farm Crowdy, Thrive Agric, and other organizations, Cellulant and the likes, and they're building amazing technologies. But then their reach, their databases and things can only go so far. We see strategic partnerships with companies like that when it comes to giving them access to our farmers, giving them access to our extension workers to reach out to the farmers, leveraging on government's accessibility to private sector and trying to streamline those things, especially for startups that may not necessarily be able to get a foot in the door. One of the things that we've done in Ogun State is that we've set up the Agricultural Technology Lab and Innovation Center. And so that is a place where people can come, they can get information on not just agribusiness and how to set up an agribusiness, but they can have a place to work. It's in the Ogun Tech Hub. And they also have a place where they can get linkage to our extension workers, linkage to our smallholder farmers and farmer associations for specific value chains that they may be interested in, or maybe they want to do a demo or pilot. They can now do that in partnership with the different demo farms that we have across the state. They can also benefit because, let's say we're working with Nestle, or we're working with apples and pears, or in terms of developing an outgrow model for them. If they have solutions for those companies, it's easier for us to say, hey, we have these people that we're working with. Let's see how this can work. One company does rating of farm hands and registration of farm hands. So if you are a farmer or in the ag sector and you have people working for you, you register your farm hands, and you make sure that, like, if somebody has stolen or somebody has done something that wasn't so great, the next person that hires them can look on this technology and see if the person is a good fit. How were they rated? And the good thing about that is that a lot of people who go through training programs for agri technology, whether through Leventis Foundation or through the state or other organizations, they can register through portals like that and get access to jobs. I think the similar thing with this AgriCorps with Cellulant. And so we want to be able to leverage on technology. Another really great one that we've been working on with the state is logistics technology. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but what we try to do is we try to partner with organizations that coordinate transportation using technology, and we try to shift them to focusing on transportation for rural farmers. So whether it's taxi cabs or whether it's trucks or whether it's big lorries and things like that, they're able to then get access to those vehicles in a much more timely fashion to get their products where they need to go. We also try to leverage on GIS coordination to be able to make sure that we have a database of all of our farmers. We have their lands mapped. We know who is growing what where. So there's a variety of ways where technology can be utilized by governments, and we also want to promote research and development and MSMEs also investing in technology that can be usable by governments, by smallholder farmers, just like what Kala is doing, as well as by large corporations as well, because we want to see how technology can kind of tie up the loose ends in the value chain.
Just coming back, can you hear me? Perfect. So for us at National Africa, we've seen that when we rely heavily on technology, we're a virtual hub. And for us, we often entrepreneurs and those within the agriculture space discuss the infrastructural issues within trying to implement technology. You have previously discussed various ways that you tackled it, whether powering as opposed to. Can you provide any the ways that entrepreneurs within the agriculture space need to dive deeper into to try and understand, to dive deeper into?
To be fair, and I will say it and I'll say it again, it is not their responsibility to provide certain infrastructure. However, we are in Nigeria, and so everybody has to play a part to get Nigeria where it needs to be. We can't just deflect responsibility to others. We just need to pick up the ball where we can and keep it rolling. So some of the things that I would say is that startups, ag tech startups, try to leverage on the power of numbers. So there's a benefit to being in a space where other ag tech companies are and sharing space, sharing resources. That's one. Number two, I would say check out a lot of the grant opportunities when you find a nexus. For example, the relationship between power and agriculture. I think there's an organization called Powering Ag. And so you can look to see what kind of opportunities are available when it comes to electricity and agriculture, or irrigation and agriculture and other things like that. In terms of road network, in terms of other major infrastructure, it's not our, it shouldn't be our cross to bear. But the beauty about that is that you can actually use technology to show governments that certain areas are agricultural hubs that need special attention for roads. So for example, those who are able to show maps of where the large number of agro-processors are, or maps of where the large number of farms are able to then show, okay, these are the road networks we need to prioritize and things like that. And I know many times that's what urban planning offices should be doing for states, and agricultural, rural development and ministries of agriculture should be doing as well. But sometimes that push by private sector is also beneficial, and being able to share that information in the public space is also beneficial to kind of cajole governments to act on that. As a state, we've prioritized rural roads, rural power, as well as leveraged a lot on some of the funds, our VCDP funds, to be able to provide bridges and roads to rural communities and economically active rural locations. So whether it's providing mini grid, so Ogun State has a lot of IPPs that come in, and what happens is that the power companies that come in, they're providing solar mini grids in different areas where you see economic activity. And what we see is that there's a lot of agro-processing activity, small and medium scale.
I think we lost Angel. We will try and get her back online. But in the meantime, Kala, there's actually a question that came in from the chat box from Otto Obom Idem, who asked, how can a startup invest heavily in tech for less tech, stakeholders within the sector on a lean?
Well, I think the beauty of technology these days is it has actually become very very easy for folks to pick up. I think at the end of the day, I would strongly recommend that most startups invest in their own technology and build up that capacity in-house, because it gives them the ultimate flexibility to evolve their technology to meet their needs. I think, we started out early. We experimented with using some third-party software and so on and so forth. But I think eventually we realized it was night and day when you're able to invest in your own.
That's great. I hope that efficiently answered your question, Otom. But the next question I have is about climate change, and we've seen the transformation it has across the board. But we've also seen how technology-based tools and the lack of access that smallholder farmers continuously have, or lack thereof. How do you feel that technology can be used to avoid post-harvest losses? How technology can be a tool for climate change? What's your thoughts on that?
That was for me or for Angel? Okay. So I think, let's talk about technology. Let's talk about climate change to start. So climate change, I think at the end of the day, really there are two key things that we have to think about with climate change. The first is around adaptation, and the second is really around mitigation. And so the sad reality is that smallholder farmers will probably be the most affected subgroup on the planet. Smallholder farmers in Africa are going to be one of the most affected subgroups in the world due to climate change. And that is driven by just what we're seeing with increased variability in weather patterns and lack of predictability of you used to be able to set your clock to when the rains would start and when they would stop. So what that requires is really, I think, two things. One is really around, to Angel's point, thinking about technology much more broadly than software, really looking at those types of varieties where you may have to trade off some yield for what I might call ruggedness. So, can that variety basically withstand drought, short droughts, right? Can that variety, I think, for example, they have certain varieties in rice now that can actually survive submerged in water for extended periods of time. And so I think the reality is that's going to be the type of technology you're going to need to think about, and you will most likely have a trade-off in terms of yield. But I think in the long run, in terms of consistent returns, it'll pay off. In terms of post-harvest, I think there are different technologies out there nowadays that are getting a little more available and cost-effective to provide hermetic storage for farmers, where basically you're not using chemicals and other somewhat dangerous products, but relying solely on the fact that you can create a hermetic seal and prevent oxygen exchange. And so I think that's been quite exciting to see.
And Angel, we have a question from Ndidi Munali, who has asked, how can the great work that you're doing in Ogun State be scaled at a national?
I will assume that that's related to the work for the Agric innovation centers. And what I'll say is that already ecosystems are being set up across. That there are tech hubs that have set up or that have put together cohorts for agri, but there needs to be a more concerted effort to ensure that even at universities, industrial parks, food technology parks are set up with infrastructure to be able to assist those who need maybe laboratories for tissue culture. IITA does a very opening its technology, but it has to be something that is across Nigeria. So having a network of ag tech hubs or innovation hubs, I supposed to Agric technology labs across the country to be able to boost this ecosystem, but it is something that the government itself can do, the federal government can do, if they're able to pick technology hubs by zone, and then others, private hubs, can also key in. You're able to then provide maybe 3D printers or soldering equipment and computers and other things like that, where they can actually do the work that they need to do, and you can have maybe even rented.
To have lost
startups where they just have that ecosystem where it's research and development, startup company.
No, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Level of coordination could be there. There's a company in the States called Agritecture. Their whole job is just to curate and agritech innovations and hubs, and they bring those people together and continue to advance ag tech, in the US. There's so many others that do that. So if we're able to do that, we don't need to wait on government. It can be a private sector driven way that we could push Agric technology across across the country. I
think we got the gist of what you were trying to say. There was some in the process, but we have less than 3 minutes left, or less than 2 minutes left, and I have one more question for both of you, and that is, what is the future of agriculture in Nigeria as it relates to technology post COVID-19? If you can give me that in less than a minute, starting with Kola, that'd be great.
It's ladies first.
Okay. Angel, the future of agriculture and technology in Nigeria post COVID-19.
Thank you. The future of agriculture in Nigeria, I think that people must eat, whether COVID or no COVID. People must eat, and so we must use technology to be able to strengthen some of the gaps that we found during COVID-19. We already knew that these gaps existed. We already knew that we had challenges in terms of logistics. We had challenges in terms of productivity. We had challenges in terms of increasing our yield. We had challenges in terms of getting people, to the farms to actually, plan to get access to their markets. But what we realized is that with COVID-19, we needed to become a bit hyper-local. We needed to be able to leverage on technology and logistics to get raw materials as close to the processors, and timing those things as well. So I would say that the future is bright if we kind of take the bull by the horns and just continue to forge a path in that direction, and also put funding into research and development and technology. Thanks.
Oh, great. And Kola, we have less than 1 minute.
Well, I echo Angel's point on very excited about the future. I think the reality is, as we've seen with many things, technology enables Africa the opportunity, or Nigeria the opportunity, to leapfrog. If you look at two major trends, one is the dramatic reduction in cost of smartphones and the increased availability of artificial intelligence. I think those two trends alone are going to create a dramatic evolution in the agriculture sector. It's one of the key areas, particularly artificial intelligence, that we've been investing very heavily. We have probably some of the most advanced artificial intelligence applications being used in agriculture in Africa today.
That's incredible. Thank you for the two of you for joining us. I have learned so much, and I'm so excited to see what happens within the agriculture space as it relates to technology, both during COVID and afterwards. To the audience for joining us, we're going back to the main stage now in the next 30 seconds or so. Have a wonderful day ahead.